Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for attending this Audit and Governance Committee meeting on Wednesday, the 27th of May, 2026. My name is Councillor Alan Platt, and I'm the chair of this committee. Councillor Mark Clifford, on my left this time, is the vice chair. Members are reminded that the meeting is being recorded and will be accessible on the council's YouTube page. If you wish to speak at any stage, please indicate to me you wish to do so. When I invite you to speak, please turn your microphone on and turn it off when you've finished speaking. Please speak clearly and do not cover your mouth while speaking to make it easier for any lip readers to understand you. Can everyone ensure their phones are turned to silent? We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarms sound, please exit the way you came in and congregate in St Thomas's Square next to the police station, which I think is fenced off at the moment, but anyway, around there. Before we start, I'd like to welcome a new addition to the committee, Councillor Martin Topp, who joins us. Also, a welcome back to Matt Derrick from our external auditors, Grant Thornton, who's dialing in. We'll now begin the meeting. Apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we've had apologies from Craig Ainsworth, who's our co-opted independent member. Everyone else is present.
Thanks, Ben. Declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda. Does anyone have any interest to declare? Okay. Item 3, minutes of the meeting on Wednesday the 18th of March, pages 3 to 6 in the papers. The minutes are included within the agenda. Are there any comments or points of accuracy to raise? Nope. Okay, are we happy to approve the minutes? Can I have a proposer second, please? Seconder? And a show of hands, please. Thank you. Item 4, 2025-26 External Audit Plan. This is pages 70 to 40, page 7 to 40 in the meeting papers. This item is for us to consider and note. I'll hand over to our external auditor, Gareth, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. So as mentioned there, you've got the audit plan in front of you this afternoon. This is for the audit year 2025-26. I wasn't intending necessarily to go through it page by page, but just highlight the key issues for your consideration. So if I could perhaps draw your attention to page 10, there we highlight what we deem to be the 3 significant risks that we've highlighted this year. They're not different from risks you will have seen in previous years, and primarily they are areas where there are a large degree of judgment, estimation and uncertainty. So the valuation of your land and buildings, we look at that and the assumptions that the valuer has used and the competencies around the valuation. We also look at the pension valuation, the work of the actuary, and we assess that. And then as well, we look at management overrider controls. So we do work specifically targeting journals to assess there that there's been an appropriate process for those journals to be posted and to have taken place. In addition to that, obviously, we look at material balances within the financial statements, and we'll do targeted testing in those areas. On page 10 there, we highlight what we deem as our materiality threshold. That has gone up slightly from last year, and that's primarily not necessarily because of any additional risk, but some internal guidance that we've had that allows us to sort of increase the percentage threshold. So it is based on 2.5% of your gross operating expenditure. So that is there at £1.5 million. We also highlight that obviously it's a group audit, so we don't just audit the council's accounts, but also the group, primarily because of your interests around the property company and the leisure company. As well as the audit of your financial statements, we also provide commentary around your value for money arrangements. And later in the plan, we highlight the 3 theme areas that we look at around financial sustainability, around your governance arrangements, and then what we call economy, efficiency and effectiveness, the 3 E's. So during the course of the year, we'll be doing work in that area as well and providing commentary later on in the year. We highlight there on page 10 the audit fee for the year. It would also be useful to highlight that this year we are committed to delivering our financial statements audit by the end of November. That is a year in advance of the statutory deadline that's coming in. We're having a dry run this year, but we are confident, given the discussions we've had with the finance team and the early interim work that we've done, that we can commit to that. So we look forward to getting the accounts at the end of June and then commencing the audit and undertaking that work. I wasn't intending necessarily to go through anything further, but if there's any further questions, happy to take those. Thank you.
Thanks, Gareth. Any questions for Gareth? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Gareth. I think the questions are actually probably Gareth and Neil. Sorry, Neil. In fact, they're probably all for you, but anyway, so I've got 3 sets of questions, if that's okay, if I may. So the first one is around external valuers, and we know that last year we had particular issues. I think it was their first year last year with the new valuers, and that caused a bit of a problem with the timing of the audit. Are we happy that they are clear on expectations of them this year? And do we think there's any risk to our capacity or anything that we need to be aware of as a committee?
Yes, I think that one probably is for me. In terms of clear on expectations, yes. I think to kind of steal the thunder a little bit from a later report, there are changes again to valuations. I think it's been a common theme to the committee that valuations seem to change every year. There is a change in respect of how we do it around indexation. As a result, valuers across the country are kind of trying to get to grips with what that means for them in terms of what they provide to us. In terms of the core valuations, we've had almost all of them, if not all of them, back. Those are in checking, so we do a process of checking and respond to them and say, we don't quite understand this factor looks a bit wrong. So we're in that process at the minute of just that check. The indexation part of it, we've received advice from them as to what indices we should use. It's now applying that. I suspect that will be a source of conversation between ourselves and the auditor through the year as to whether we applied that in the way that's expected. Because it's the first year, the valuers have mixed feelings on indexation, I think it's fair to say, on their view of how useful it is. But fundamentally, I think, yes, they understand our expectations. They absolutely understand our estate better because they valued it for 2 years now. And I don't foresee any issues being because of a delay. It'll be because of some interpretation.
Okay, thank you. I think that gives assurance that you are all over that one. Good luck with it anyway this year. The second one is around the prior year audit recommendations, and it's really helpful to see them in there for us as a committee. Probably back to Neil. Do we think there's any risk to completion of those, or anything that the committee needs to be aware of that we may not be able to cover this year?
I don't think any risk to completion of them. I think in terms of the journals one, it's always been a sticking point in terms of the best practice versus the realistic size of our team. I think successfully the team have prevented myself from getting involved in any journals this year, so I think that's a progress from a previous year's recommendation where I'm not involved in that process at all. But I think that will always be a sticking point of how do we achieve best practice in a team with the size that we've got. It's just not realistic to have a hierarchy because there isn't enough numbers to do that. But aside from that, all the other recommendations, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't have been addressed.
That's good to hear, thank you. And finally, it's just around if there are any other risks that aren't already covered in the report, so whether that's around capacity for the finance team and others who are involved in the audit, or do Grant Thornton foresee any additional testing potential that may be there that could increase cost? Is there anything on the horizon that you're aware of at the moment?
Not at the moment, no. As I say, we undertake a risk-based planning process. So the audit plan that you've got here is considering various risks that we're aware of, but not as we sit here at the moment. It's encouraging and pleasing that there's been that dialogue with the valuer and you've got the information in early. That is always an area, as Neil said, across every audit where there's issues with the valuations and just the level of detail that's sometimes been provided, but it's year 2, So hopefully we'll have that level of detail and information.
Just in respect of staff capacity, I think not in terms of number of staff and capacity. Actually, we've got quite an experienced developed team now. We've been through some of the processes. I think there was a genuine risk with the implementation of a new finance system and doing the accounts at the same time. I think that was a genuine risk that we recognised early on. I think at the moment we're still on track, so I think that's okay. It's a mitigated risk, but it was absolutely a risk at the time. If things had gone wrong with the finance system, we'd discussed this with the auditors that could be a potential risk, but at the moment we don't see that being an issue.
Thank you. I do think the finance team need to be commended as well on the new finance system and pulling that all out as well. So good luck to you through the audit. Thank you.
Councillor France.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. Probably you've answered most of my question, Neil, which is on the engagement of valuer. But it says best practice is to sign terms of engagement. Has that been done?
So yes, so I think last year we were late in signing the terms of engagement, even though we got a signed contract with the valuer. So yes, we have got signed terms of engagement from the previous year as well. Clearly there's been changes, so there'll be tweaks to those terms of indexation we just discussed, but yes, we do.
Okay.
Councillor Hayden. Any more questions around the committee? No. Thank you. We shall now move on to the next item, which is item 5, the internal annual audit report and opinion, pages 2025 to 26, pages 41 to 60 in the reports. This item is again for us to consider and note, and Dawn will be doing that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So as you said, this report is our annual report and opinion, and it's a requirement of both the global internal audit standards and sit for guidance on the role of head of internal audit. We've presented the report in the same format as in previous years, so I won't go through it in great detail, but draw your attention to a couple of areas if I can. So firstly, the Council has adopted the 3 lines of defence model as shown under paragraph 9. And basically this means that the first line of defence is the management. They are the people who are responsible for implementing good governance and controls and manage risks appropriately. Internal audit are the 3rd line of defence, and we are here to provide independent assurance regarding the application of these controls and whether they're working effectively or not. Moving on to the scope and objectives of internal audit, to ensure compliance with the standards, we need to confirm to yourselves annually that there is no impairment or restrictions that have impacted the independence of internal audit over the past 12 months. So this is a key point to note, that the service has operated, as it usually does, with objectivity, integrity and independence, and we are purely providing an opinion on the assurance rating based on the evidence available for review during the course of the audit. So in order to provide the opinion, it's important that it includes all different aspects of the organisation, and the chart under paragraph 18 shows the split of the reviews undertaken between all the different directorates, so you can see from that we've got good coverage of the whole organisation. So the table at paragraph 21 shows the reviews that have been completed during the past 12 months with the assurance rating provided. A large proportion of these have been previously reported to the committee. There is just the one limited assurance report which you've not previously seen, and that's the investment properties. And in attendance today we've got Adam Nixon, who's the head of the service, and Gail Wooten, who is the Director of Property and Planning, and they will be able to respond to any specific questions you have in relation to that particular review, and we'll try and respond to any other queries you've got. Excuse me. So whilst we had planned to complete 16 separate reviews and over 25-26, you'll recall that we requested to defer 2 separate reviews as detailed under paragraph 29, And this was due to the resource limitations within the audit team or to allow time for newly introduced processes to embed. Both of these reviews will be undertaken during 26-27, so it's a timing issue. They've not been deferred completely, they've just moved to a later date. Moving down, the table at paragraph 44 shows that whilst new assurance ratings were introduced over the past 12 months, and we removed the full assurance rating, which we very rarely used, it can be seen that the assurance ratings awarded are broadly in line with previous years, and that benchmarking with other local authorities reveals a very similar picture across Lancashire. A good news story is the implementation of agreed actions. This shows a marked improvement from previous years, with shared services achieving the 90% target implementation rate and Chorley just being ever so slightly below. At the end of March, there were only 18 actions which were still outstanding, all of which are not of such significance that I would raise any concerns about them or escalate them. During next year, we're going to change the report slightly so that any critical risks or significant areas of concern will be highlighted separately in the report, so it will be easier for you to read. And this has been agreed internally with the corporate governance group. Risk management and governance are included as separate items on the agenda today, so I won't expand on those too much. And then moving on to the opinion, which is included at paragraph 59, we can confirm that the governance, risk and control arrangements within the council are generally adequate. The council does have a comprehensive governance framework in place. However, as stated in the report, the application and some control weaknesses exist in some arrangements. The remainder of the report includes the compliance with the standard, which is again another report on the agenda, and our KPIs. So sorry that was slightly longer than usual, but hopefully it summarised the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Dawn. And as Dawn said, we also have Gail and Adam from the Property Department to answer any questions on the management of investment properties. Councillor Hayden. Can you switch your microphone on, Christine?
Yeah, so no, sorry. Yeah, so I think the plan has thrown up the weaknesses where they've needed to be thrown up. And I think to follow on from that, we need, whether it's through Gail today and Adam, or to bring back to this meeting, the correction plans, the improvement plans that are being put in place to manage those, especially where they've gone, the risks have gone down to the minimal standard, and where we do need to improve. So we've got the events actions, we've got the volunteer plans and the contract management and investment properties. So those are the four areas that have been thrown up really where there needs to be quite a bit of work done. By looking at this on the surface, it may be not as bad as we think once we get into that, but I think that is something that we need to go into next. So whether or not Gail can answer any of those, or Adam.
I can touch on the investment properties. As from the summary, there's been quite a lot of work undertaken over the last few years within the team. There's a lack of consistency, I guess, across how we manage our estate. There was a new asset management system procured. It was just under 3 years ago. There was an implementation plan of around 1.5 years to get information onto the system that was accurate, and I guess from the information that we currently had. So probably about 1.5 years ago to under a year, we've probably been using that consistently, trying to use that consistently across the team. Through the audit, it's probably identified that it's not being used to its full potential. I think that's just through maybe a lack of understanding of some of my team, so we are working with them. And there's certain elements that have been identified through the audit which there are improvements needed, but you'll see from the summary as well, there are a lot of actions that we've already put in place and we're already aware of. One being the strategic asset management plan, which is identifying a full range of policies and procedures which will be implemented across the service. Similar to condition surveys across our investment estate, which we have done, but we've never really had a programme where we're consistently doing them and using that to inform maintenance. So there's quite a few things that have been identified in the audit, but I think which I'm hoping Dawn's team has seen that we are putting things in place and have already put things in place. So we have an action plan from the audit as well, which we've got agreed timescales for certain actions. So we can definitely bring an update over the next few months on where we're up to with that.
Okay, so that will be good. Thanks, Chair.
Any more questions? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, and thanks for the report. First, I'd just like to say congratulations on those management actions and getting those percentages significantly higher than where they have been in the past. Really good to see, and from our view, assurance is a lot greater with that. So I think that's fantastic, and it'd be great to see it now continue and for those actions to all be completed. But fantastic news. I have a couple of questions, and I don't know if this is the right forum because it's more detail on a bit like Councillor Hayden talked about, so contract management, and then the National Fraud Initiative around the single person discount. But I'll throw it out there and see if we know the answer or not. So contract management, the new system was being implemented from the 1st of April. So I just wondered how that was going. Who's managing the oversight of that, and how are we doing with getting the data onto the system, and where does that come under? That's the first question.
It's our head of legal and procurement who's actually managing that at the moment, who unfortunately isn't here today. But what similar to Adam, what we can do is we can bring back the action plan that shows you exactly where each action's up to, if that would be helpful. We can bring that back to either July or September.
That would be great, thank you. Sorry, did you want to speak now?
Just in respect to the system, it's utilising the Technology One system, so it's linked to the financial system as well. So in terms of the data, it went live on 1st of April alongside the system. At the moment, the procurement team are putting contracts on there and starting to link those, so that is in process. It's not full of all contracts yet. I think they're working on a risk basis and working on the larger ones that they can get to first. But they've started to populate that, and people have started to put the various information onto that system.
Brilliant, really great news. So we should see a reduction in single tender waivers and issues with contracts, hopefully, going forward. They're not nodding there, but eventually you will. Okay, the second one is around point 41, page 53, which is under National Fraud Initiative, and it's the single person discount issue. I think the end of that paragraph, 41, should say April 26, not 25, I think, because the review was done of the Q3 25-26. And what that is saying, that on the 1st of April, if residents haven't responded as to whether they're still entitled to the single person discount, that they will have they'll be cancelled from that discount. So I just wondered if we could have an update on that as to how many actually fell into that and whether we have actually implemented that now from the 1st of April and what the potential saving is.
That's something I can pick up with the head of revenues and benefits, and I'll bring that back in, or ask her to provide an update in July.
That's great. I'm also interested in that as to whether nationally they're looking at doing that again, because it kind of makes a lot of sense if they can do that triangulation centrally and then just let you know who we need to target, whether they're planning that periodically or not.
The single person discount exercise is undertaken annually. The wider National Fraud Initiative, where we look at things like creditors and housing data, that's only undertaken every 2 years, but single person discount is done annually.
Any more questions? No. Right, well that's to consider a note, so we shall take that as noted. And move on to the next item, which is item 6, internal audit, compliance with the global internal audit standards, pages 77 to 96. Again, this item is for us to consider and note the report, and Jackie is going to present this one.
So this report outlines our first self-assessment since the introduction of the global internal audit standards, which was effective with effect from April last year. As a UK public sector, we need to comply with the global standards as well as the SIPFA application note and the code of practice. So we have 3 appendices for you. The first one outlines our QAPE, our Quality and Assurance Programme, and this is our internal policies and procedures for internal audit, which assures that we meet the regulations and that our work is carried out to a standard that you would expect. Appendices B provides you with the actual results of our self-assessment, and you can see that we conform largely across all the principles and the standards outlined. I think there's one that we're partially complying with. This was previously a recommended standard, and we felt that we could do better with this one, so we've actually undertaken a corporate approach to this. And you'll see later in the agenda, the action we've agreed for that is actually in the annual governance statement. So it's going to be a bit of an assurance mapping exercise for the whole of the organisation. So overall, we've got 8 improvement actions. And again, it's not that we've found gaps in what we do. We just want to make sure that we can properly evidence the new requirements as stated, really. So at the moment, we've given ourselves generally conforms, which is the highest you can give on a self-assessment. And we can't state that we fully conform until we get our external assessment, which is conducted every 5 years. So our last one was in 2023, so we're not due for that at the moment. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Jackie. Any questions for Jackie on this one? Sorry, Councillor Hayden.
Thanks, Jackie. It's just about on the actions to address. How will those be taken up forward, and will it be coming back, or will it just be managed off outside this meeting?
Yes, we've put together an action plan, and we'll be bringing you an update on that in possibly January. I think we'll bring that back to committee for you.
Any more questions? No. Okay. We'll move on to the next item. Which is item 7, the Risk Management Annual Report, pages 97 to 112. This one is again for us to consider and note the report, and Dawn is going to present this one.
Yeah, again, thank you, Chair. This is our annual report on our risk management arrangements throughout the whole council. It's part of your terms of reference that you understand how risk management works and review the effectiveness of risk management within the organisation. So this report helps you achieve that requirement. So as an authority, we manage risk at all levels, and that's set out in the risk management strategy, which is presented to yourselves annually. We review the risk management strategy, like I say, on an annual basis, and we update it to make sure that it's still meeting the needs of the organisation. So that last came, I think, in March or January. It was one of them two. I can't quite remember. I think it was March, was it? Yeah, March. And it sets out how we manage risk. So as an organisation, we manage risks at all levels. So we have the strategic risk register, we have corporate strategy projects, major projects, any partnerships or contracts that we have, right down to operational risks. They're all managed. And they're managed on a dedicated risk management system called GRACE, which takes out a lot of the legwork of managing risk, in that it's automated how frequently you need to undertake reviews on risks, and it highlights if there's any red risks that need review more frequently, and any actions that need to be taken to further mitigate risk. So as we said, on our strategic risks, we have our strategic risk register, which is owned by the senior management team and cabinet, and that's been presented twice a year. The last one was earlier in 2026. And it was quite a fundamental review that we did this time, and it resulted in a number of changes as highlighted under paragraph 15. We combined a number of risks in relation to the workforce. because a lot of the controls were repeated, so we just combined the risks. We changed the wording in relation to an IT security risk, so it was it had a wider scope and covered all data types. And we also introduced the new risk of failure to manage AI. Obviously, this is a new and emerging risk. And because of that, there's an agreement that we will review this risk on a more frequent basis. That was to be reviewed every 3 months rather than twice a year, to make sure that we've got proper mitigations in place. On moving down the report, like I said, we manage risk at all level on our corporate strategy projects, our contracts, our operational risks, and we've also set our risk appetite. So it's very clear about if we have red risks, how they are to be managed, whether they're an operational level or a strategic level. We do significant amount of training on risk management, both on risk management and on the use of GRACE, to make sure that officers are well versed in how to manage risk. And we've also added some detail in about our insurance policies and claims that we've experienced, because that's yet another form of risk management. As a result, we've attached a risk maturity matrix, and we're of the opinion that the authority is risk managed. We are in a good place in terms of how we manage risk across the authority. But there is still work to do, and we've identified some future developments for the next 12 months. So happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Dawn. Any questions for Dawn? Councillor Brown?
Thanks, Dawn. Just in terms, I think it's a really helpful report. I think I asked this question last time around when the committee gets sight of the risk register and what's on there. So what we've got here are we've got strategic risk, but we don't have scores against them. They do have scores though, don't they? I think. Yeah. Okay. So it's good to see local government reorganisation on there. Obviously, that's going to be a key one, I think, for the council for the next couple of years. Underneath that, then are there a series of other more operational risks associated with that underneath it, and do they have individual scores? And I think I just haven't quite got it in my head how it works.
In relation to local government
If we take LGR as an example, yeah.
I wouldn't say yet it's featuring in operational risk registers as yet, but I think as time progresses, I think it will start to feature more and more. And obviously once the decision's made and we know which direction we're travelling, then I think it would be beneficial, maybe at a senior leadership team meeting for us to look at the risks at an operational level. So I think that's to come yet, but we're not there yet.
Any more questions? No. I'd like to thank Dawn and Jackie for the internal audit team for their hard work on the last 2 or 3 items. Thank you. Item 8 is the annual governance statement, pages 113 to 130. This item is for decision. We're being asked to approve the draft annual governance statement. Again, over to Dawn.
Thank you, Chair. Again, this is the annual governance statement that comes to you annually at this time of year. And it sets out the governance framework. It's our highest level governance documentation. So the baseline for this is the local code that we presented to yourselves in March, and that's based on the Sit for Solace guidance and contains the 7 principles of what good governance looks like. We then test against that local code. Internal audit do a tremendous amount of work to test the accuracy and whether the things that are stated within the local code are actually working effectively. And then that results in the annual governance statement being prepared, which, as I say, clearly sets out our governance framework and all the different arrangements that we've got in place. The other thing it does, it identifies any areas where we need to strengthen our governance arrangements, and that's included at the table on page 129. And it also is a backward look at the actions we identified from last year, which you can see that of the 6 actions, 5 are marked as complete, with only 1 action in relation to GDPR being carried forward. The other actions, you will be familiar with. They are things that we've raised at this committee before. So GDPR we're carrying forward because there has been a review commissioned, and we're waiting for the results of that review, and then we need to embed any actions arising from that review. Contract management, you're aware of the issues that we highlighted earlier in the year about that. There's obviously a bit of a gap at the minute in our management team structure, so that's currently being addressed. And as Jackie mentioned, we need to do that corporate assessment of all the assurance that we can place reliance on as an organisation. And although it's within our standard, it has to be an organisational exercise so that everybody is fully aware of where all the different types of assurance that we can use is coming from. And then it's about, like you say, looking at our partnership landscape and ensuring that proportionate governance arrangements are in place for all partnerships and contracts. And then obviously we've got LGR, and it's making sure that although once we know the decision, it's making sure that our current governance framework remains strong whilst new arrangements are being put in place. So this is our highest level document. It has to be signed by the Chief Exec and the leader. And then ultimately it forms part of the statement of accounts, and then will be audited by external audit as well. So happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Dawn. Questions, Councillor Clifford?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd just like to actually thank you for the training that we had yesterday on the annual governance statement. It's we always say that training is very important for the audit committee, so I'd just like to say thank you once again.
Any more questions or observations? No. Right, can we move to vote on this one then, on approving the annual governance statement? Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Clifford, seconder? Anybody? Right, good. All those in favour? Thank you. We should move on to item 9, which is the management response to audit planning inquiries, pages 131 to 146. This item is for us to consider a note, and Neil will be presenting this.
Thank you, Chair. So this is our annual response to the auditors in respect of the inquiries ahead of the audit. There isn't a lot of change from previous years in this. Probably the biggest item of change we've already discussed earlier on, which relates to indexation in property valuations. I suspect you will hear me repeat that phrase over and over again over this year, and we will cover it in the statement of accounts. Training as to how that's impacted the accounts in detail. In terms of the rest of the responses, we sit down as a team, discuss those. We sit down with Dawn as head of audit. We sit down with the legal team and discuss all the responses. There isn't a huge other significant change other than the normal annual kind of things that you'd expect to change. It does cover anything in respect of fraud, laws and regulation changes, and again, not huge changes across this year, nothing that we're seeing that is dramatically changing how we will behave, and that's not just in respect of accounting, that's in general terms. Anything in relation to related parties, it does cover going concern. I think, again, I'll probably repeat this quite consistently. We are still working on the basis of LGR isn't happening until there is an official decision. We report as if the council is continuing. That is our intention, to ensure that the council could continue if it was required to continue. So as a result, we respond to the going concern elements and then our accounting estimates. And again, no significant changes really from year to year outside of the indexation, which I've discussed. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Neil. Any questions for Neil? No? Could I just ask Gareth whether the external auditors are happy with the responses, or are you not at that stage yet?
Yes, we are satisfied with those responses. That helps inform our audit plan. So if there was any particular risks that was being highlighted that gave us concern, we would address that within our audit plan and some additional work. So no, there's nothing that's come to light from those responses.
Thanks, Gareth. Right, if there are no further questions, we'll move on to the next item, which is item 10, the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy Resilience Index. It's easy for me to say. Pages 147 to 158. And again, this item is for us to consider a note, and Neil's presenting this one.
So in terms of the history of this index, I think it was brought before committee partly as a result of some recommendations around looking at local government benchmarking. I think my kind of thoughts on this index of, while it's well intentioned at the start of it, I understand the genesis. A lot of the things have started to whittle away a little bit, and I think that the committee needs to take this in the context of the other items that it receives around the statement of accounts. The council receives the overall budget papers. There's cabinet papers there to read if people want them, in terms of understanding Chorley Council's specific financial resilience. I think it needs that context. In terms of the indices themselves, I think CIPFA have slowly realised over the years some of them are less useful than others, so you see that the numbers have dwindled. I think also what's happened in the last year is some of the items have been made redundant by some of the financial changes that have happened. So, for example, growth in business rates doesn't really impact us as a council now massively, because the fair funding formula removed that as a realistic kind of an indicator for us, because actually most of that growth will go to government and will be redistributed through the formula. So I think a lot of the changes have meant that this piece of work, while not completely worthless, is absolutely a little devalued in terms of its value to the committee. But I think it's worth bringing in that context, and I think what my ask of the committee is one thing is there anything in future years that you would like me to add to this report that would add value to you? We have explored other benchmarking. Local government is not great at benchmarking. There is not great other benchmarking out there that we find that is valuable that we will bring. We have looked at a couple of providers. We could bring other context. We could bring some from the budget report, some extra context which is specific to Chorley if people would find that useful. In terms of the tables at the end in the appendices, it does give you the indications next to our nearest neighbours. It gives you some idea of where we sit. I suspect that you will see some strange things over the next couple of years with LGR, because different people will be at different stages. So again, every single one would need to come with that context. I think that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Neil. And members of the committee, if there are any items you'd like to include, as Neil said, please let him know. Any questions? Councillor Brown.
Not a question, actually. I totally agree with you. I think in isolation, it doesn't really say that much. It just compares you to neighbours, but it doesn't give you any context about where they are, what their levels of investment are, what their strategies for their areas and towns are, and how they're actually doing in other. So it doesn't mean anything in isolation. It's just a figure compared to something else. The only thing for me where this may be useful is if, in looking at future budgets, etc., and strategies, it was used as this is where we are now, and maybe with an aspirational target as to but then you don't know how the others move. So actually that doesn't work either, thinking about it. For me, you can only really look at where Chorley is and what we're trying to get to within Chorley. You could pick out any of these and say, oh, look, we're really bad compared to, or really good compared to others, but we don't know what the others are or who they are. So I completely agree. I actually think it's not that useful in its current form. But, thanks for the report anyway.
Thanks, Councillor Brown. Any more questions or observations? Nope. Okie dokes. We'll move on to the next item, which is item 11. Charity financial accounts, pages 147 to 158. This item is for decision, and we're asked to approve the accounts presented in the report. Over to Neil again.
So again, members may remember that the council used to have a number of charities, most of which we've now closed down because they were of limited values coming in annually. The remaining one has a significant investment which generates an income annually. So this is the remaining charity that the council runs and maintains. So the money is from the proceeds of the former Free Library as it details in the report. In terms of the accounts, we don't put them in the statement of accounts, so as a result we bring them here for transparency so you can see the details. I would just say there's an estimated figure in there because we didn't have the statement at the point in time of report publication, the statements come since, and it's broadly in line with what we said in the estimate, so there's no significant difference from there. I think a comment I would make is that in September 2024, there was an allocation of funds from the charity. That was the last time there was an allocation of funds. I have spoken to the communities team who were involved in the allocation last time and suggested that we could arrange to allocate some of the funds, because I think we would come under some scrutiny if the money just keeps sitting there. So I've asked the community team to look at that and see whether they could run it alongside some of the other grant funding that they do. Clearly, there was a trustees meeting involved in a decision-making process to allocate any of those funds that would be undertaken. But I think it's important that we keep spending the money that is there. But other than that, it's just to approve the accounts as they are.
Thanks, Neil. Any questions for Neil? Councillor Brown.
Thank you. You've just touched on what I was going to ask about, which is the form of free library and the external investments that are there. So it looks, so when the previous investment, apologies, was done, that was from the cash held at the council, I think, and not a reduction to the external investment, or it may have been. So what am I trying to say? The external investment, are there plans for that, or has that just always sat there gaining interest, and it's the interest that is being invested, or are there particular covenants around that means it can't be touched, or?
So it is invested with BlackRock, so it is invested in and is in, it's not just interest, but obviously the gains that you get and the dividends in response to that. We don't have any particular plans as we sit here today. Nothing prevents us from going away and looking at it and going, let's distribute all of it. Like, say that you would have to obviously follow all the relevant rules in respect of what it was, the covenants, and there are covenants on what the money can be spent on in respect of the initial element of it. Nothing prevents us from going down that route. I think the last time it was brought, and obviously this predates myself as director, I understand the feeling was that this one was one we wanted to keep and wanted to maintain and have the annual income. I think probably what we need to build in is an annual process for actually allocating it, so that it's in a process, not just every couple of years we think about it and then spend the money. If we want to explore the kind of possible sale of it all, or even transfer, you could look at a similar charity to transfer, which is often what people would do with an endowment like that. That's absolutely something we can explore as a team if the committee wished.
Any more questions? No? Okay. We need to move to a vote on approving the accounts. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Clifford, seconder. Councillor Hayden. All those in favour? Thank you. Item 12, the Regulation of Investigative Powers Act 2000 update. I'll hand over to Alex. Thanks, Alex. One day, commit, one day. Item 13, which is the Committee Work Programme 2026 to 27, pages 163 to 166 on the papers. This item is for information. Members are asked to note the work programme and provide any feedback. Does anyone have any questions? I know Mr Ripley has one.
Thank you, Chair. I was just interested to see under the members' standard update, review of the standards hearing procedure. I wondered whether it meant the hearings procedure or the whole procedure for investigating complaints, because in the 14 years that we've had this standards regime, there's only been 2 hearings, which is a very good thing, of course, but it doesn't seem like it's something that necessarily needs a lot of work on it. So I just wondered if someone could clarify that for me.
Well, the hearing procedure is actually contained in the Constitution as well. So if you were to review that, you would in effect be reviewing part of the Constitution as well. So I think you've raised an interesting question as to what exactly is proposed there, because it can't be separated out from reviewing the Constitution. So the answer to that question is I don't know either what exactly is proposed and how far reaching it would be.
Chair, can I just... Yeah, just to add somewhat, obviously our head of legal and procurement isn't here today, but I know it's a piece of work that she's obviously looking at, so we can certainly provide an update to yourself and committee members just to clarify that.
Thanks, Ben. On the other hand, it might show how well behaved we all are. Councillor Brown.
Thank you. The only thing, and it's probably features as part of the things that are already on the work plan, is around LGR and whether we needed anything specific towards it, maybe in Q3, Q4, just specifically around that, but it may feature as part of an internal audit report, or I think that's just something we need to keep on the radar for this year.
Any more questions? Nope. Item 14. Any urgent business previously agreed with the chair? There is none. So that concludes the meeting. Thank you for attending.